happy Baymax. Happy Halloween. Or happy horse. Happy fun Halloween.
Happy fun Halloween.
Happy fun Halloween. And fun Halloween. It's house Halloween.
Fall. Okay.
Fall and Halloween are best.
Right, you gonna tell them bye?
Bye. Good morning.
Good morning.
Night night.
Night night. That's right.
And when it's morning, I'll say good morning.
That's right.
Come on. Hey, let me get a present. Okay.
Go on. All right. I decided to go on and just move on with the next chapter. Today, we're going to talk about her. And I thought it was interesting. I told you all last week that we'll be talking about her, not looking at my Wednesday night lesson yet. And Wednesday night, we talked about her. And then I'm preparing for this devotional after Wednesday night, and we're talking about her. So I thought that was kind of interesting how that played out. And as some of you all may know, I'm struggling to have a voice, so we're going to see if we can get through it. This is probably as loud as I'm going to get. Maybe turn your volume up if it's really bad. Shoot me a message, and I'll redo it this week. Hopefully I'll have a voice in a couple of days. But we'll try to get through it the best we can. So with her, the whole idea, the main point is playing a supporting role. And we're going to look at Exodus 17, verses 8 through 13, and Exodus 24, 12 through 15. And we're looking at Exodus because that is where her is first mentioned. He was one of the many Israelites wandering around the wilderness after the escape from Egypt. So he's part of that group, part of that clan that was driven out from Pharaoh. And that was part of the whole group that was with them when they parted the Red Sea, when they escaped from Pharaoh. Now they're in the wilderness, part of that group that was complaining because they didn't have food, complaining because they didn't have water, complaining because it was hot, complaining because they were tired. He was part of those people. He was part of those thousands and millions and however many there was, probably not millions, but tens of thousands, I think is what the book I read, but lots and lots of people are walking. And before this, I should have mentioned this first, we believe that her is Miriam's husband. And that put a whole new aspect to it for me, because it's not just some random guy. It's Moses' brother-in-law. It's his sister's husband. 1 Chronicles 2:19 tells us that Hur was from the tribe of Judah. And he could possibly, we don't know, it's not proven, but we think that he could have been from the son of Caleb. And we all know Caleb was one of the spies sent to Canaan to scope out the land to see, hey, is it good land? Can we take it? Is it bad land? This is where we think Hur comes from. While the Amalekites were battling the Israelites, Moses' arms get tired. And the backstory is they've been traveling. They're griping. Now the Amalekites come and they attack them. They keep attacking them from behind and behind and behind. Well, when word finally gets up to Moses, whether he's at the front of the line, the middle of the line, wherever he's at, by the time word gets to him, they're tired of being attacked. He gathers a group of people and he says, look, you all are going to get in the back. You all are going to fight. Because the Amalekites were attacking the back, because who's in the back? The older people, the weaker people, the feeble people. I think the little people, little kids that really can't do anything. They can't defend themselves. Easy prey, if you will. So Moses sends them to the back to guard the rest of the people. He goes up on the mountain. And while he's up there, he is up there watching. And so God tells him he has to have this rod. He has to take this staff. You know, it's the same staff that turned into a snake. It's the same staff that hit the rock and made water come out of it. It's the same staff that he parted or reached over the Red Sea and it parted. The same staff that he reached over and it closed back up. It's the same staff. The staff's very important. So he's up on this hill, up on this mountain, up on this hill where he can see. And every time he's got to hold this staff up. And when the staff is up, the Amalekites flee. They quit fighting. They quit battling. Every time Moses' arm starts to drop, the Amalekites come back and they start fighting. And they start hurting their people and taking advantage of their people. Well, could you imagine this wasn't a short battle? This was not something that was one and done. It lasted a long time. Well, when he went up to this hill, he took Aaron and he took Hur. And again, if Hur was his brother-in-law, that makes sense. You're going to take your family. You're going to take the closest ones to you. So he took Aaron and Hur up to this hill with him. They knew what Moses had to do. They see Moses struggling. So they get together and like, okay, Aaron and Hur are like, we got to do something. We got to help him out. So they get Moses and they sit him on a rock. And then they each one hold up his arms. Now, they held his arms so that the rod would not go down. Because what happens when the rod goes down? The fighting begins again. When the rod is up, the Amalekites flee. So it's very important that this rod stay up in the air. Well, I can imagine their arms got tired too, but they knew they had to do it. This is where we get the supporting role. This is where we're going to talk about with Hur. He was the support. We need to be like Hur. We need to be support. We see in Exodus 24:14, Hur continually helped Moses out. Moses trusted them to take care of the Israelites when he went and met God on Mount Sinai. Somebody had to lead the people. Somebody had to keep him in check. There's a lot of griping going on. There's a lot of complaining going on. Somebody had to keep him in check. So when Moses is going, he puts Hur in charge. And puts Hur and Aaron, he puts Hur in charge. Because why? He had earned Moses' trust. He was dependable. He was worthy. He was a great supporter. So there are 4 things we can learn from Hur. Number 1, he was called upon to play a supporting role rather than to lead. Now, he may have wanted to be the leader. He may have thought he should have been the leader, but he didn't. He did not overstep his bounds. His role was to be supporter, to be a helper, to be there for Moses, and he was. He never tried to go over Moses' head. He never tried to take Moses' role away from him. He could have very easily, when they were up on that hill, taken that staff away from Moses and said, I'm stronger than you. I'm better than you. I can do this. He didn't. Instead, he made up a plan to help Moses because he knew God had told Moses, you've got to hold this rod. He never usurped his authority. He knew his role. He stayed in his place. And sometimes that's all we're called to do. A lot of the times we want to be the leader. We want to be the one that gets all the glory. We want to be in the spotlight. And that's not. Sometimes we're just the supporter. We're the quiet one. We're the one that sits there and listens. We're the one that gets the game plan going. We're the one that is behind the scenes, so to speak. Sometimes that's who we need to be. And that's okay. And if that's our role, we need to recognize that role. And we need to just be the supporter and not be the leader. We must be willing to be the supporting role. Instead of always wanting to be the leader, we have to be willing to be the supporting role. Secondly, the second thing we can learn, Hur served in a tiring job. He was tired. His arms got tired holding Moses' arm up. He probably was bored. Okay, yes, you're watching the battle. You're watching them run, flee. You're watching your people. You're concerned, but he was bored. You're bored. But guess what? He didn't stop. He continued his job until it was over. Sometimes we are asked to do tiring jobs. The examples that she used in the book, and I think they were good examples. The first thing what she used for tiring was teaching. Teaching classes. How many times do we hear, I put my time in. I'm too old. I'm too tired. I got too much going on. I did it the last 4 quarters. I can't do one more. We're tired. We don't want to do it anymore. We're tired. What about Meals on Wheels? Some of us are lucky. We only do it maybe, twice a year? I don't even know if we've done it since COVID hit. But I know before, I think we did. I know we did at least once, if not twice a year. That is exhausting. It only takes an hour or so to do, but it is exhausting. So I agree with her in her example. Think about the people who have to do it weekly. The thing about the people who don't get a break, who have to do it every single week. They're exhausted. But we have to do it. We have to do it. If we're exhausted, if we're tired, if we're ready to give up, we can't give up. We still need to be teaching our Bible classes. We still need to be caring for others, whether it's cooking meals or visiting people or sending cards or checking on people or whatever it is. We cannot get tired. Our job sometimes is tiring, but we cannot give up. When we get tired, there are 4 verses we need to remember. The first verse is Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Galatians 6:9. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. 2 Thessalonians 3:13. But as for you, brethren, do not grow weary in doing good. And lastly, Hebrews 12:3. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. Don't become weary. Don't become tired. Thirdly, Moses, Aaron, and Hur all had to do their part. They all had a part, a crucial part, an important part, and they did it. We all need to do our part. We all have a part. We all have a role. We need to make sure we are fulfilling it. 1 Corinthians 12:14-24. We all know this verse. It talks about all of us are part of one body, and all of us have a different role. Even though we're all different parts, we all have things we need to do. One is not more important than the other part. And we all have to work together for good. And you all have heard sermon after sermon after sermon about this. If we were all hands, that wouldn't be good. If we were all feet, that wouldn't be good. If we were all listeners, that wouldn't be good. If we were all talkers, that wouldn't be good. We all have a certain role. We all have a certain role that we need to do. And what's the most important thing that it says to do in those verses in 1 Corinthians? Do it together. Be united. All work together. Find your role, fulfill your role, fit your role, and be united while we do it. The last thing that we learn, Hur had to trust Moses. He had to trust the person in charge of him. Moses had his pick of any man. You know, he said there was tens of thousands of people in this desert. He could have picked any man he wanted to come help him. But he chose Hur. Now, again, like I said before, I think some of it may have been because they were related, if that part is true. But there's also another part about Hur. He was reliable. He was trustworthy. He was dependable. Moses knew he would not have a problem out of Hur. He knew that Hur was not going to try to take over and do his job. He knew that Hur would do exactly what he was asked and nothing more. That he would not go beyond what he was supposed to. He had no worries. No worries. We need to be Hur. We need to be trustworthy. We need to be dependable. Our reputation needs to be honorable and reliable. When people think of us, are we reliable? Or are we that, she'll say she'll do it, but she never gets it done? She says she'll come, but she's never going to show up. She says she'll do this, but it never gets done. Don't be that person. Don't be that person. Be honorable and reliable. Hur worked tirelessly and faithfully in a supporting role. His job was to support. We don't know much about Hur, but we do know he was faithful and he was a trustworthy servant of God. 2 very, very good things. Are we like Hur? if our role is the supporting role, and at some point in our life, we're going to be called to be the supporting role. That's all we're going to need to be. We're going to need to be that listening ear. We're going to need to be that shoulder to lean on, the shoulder to cry on, the shoulder to bear someone else's burdens, just to support them, to help them along the way. Are we fulfilling that role? Can we do that? Will we do that? Will we be like her? Thank you all for listening. And next week, I didn't look. Next week, we're doing Ithamar, I think is his name. List maker extraordinaire. So that one might be right up my alley because I love to make lists, because then I like the fulfillment of seeing them crossed off. I feel like I have accomplished something. So I hope everyone has a great week. Stay warm. It's supposed to be a little chilly a couple of nights this week. So have a great week, and I will see you all here next week.